Hey, Pastor, be honest with me. Have you ever walked out of church on a Sunday and you thought to yourself, that was an absolute disaster? That sermon that you had worked on so hard during the week just didn't land, and the worship team had technical issues that were outside of your control, or maybe even the family that told you they were going to show up and you've been praying for them, they didn't show. And now it's Monday morning, and instead of sitting behind your desk being full of joy, you feel empty, almost embarrassed for how the day went. And I know that feeling because I've had Sundays where I've walked out thinking I probably should have quit. I've had Mondays where I thought, God, are you sure that you've even called the right guy? And if you've ever felt that way, I just want to tell you, you're not the first. I think back in the scriptures to a guy named Elijah, one of the greatest prophets in the scripture, had the same Monday morning crash. And let's rewind for just a second, because in 1 Kings chapter 18, Elijah, he has this incredible mountaintop victory, right? He calls down fire from heaven, destroys the false prophets of Baal, and he sees God's power on display for everybody to see. And it was that kind of moment that we as pastors dream about, where people can't deny the presence of God, where ministry feels worth it. But just one chapter later in 1 Kings 19, we find Elijah running for his life. He's exhausted, collapses under a broom tree, and he literally prays, Lord, I have had enough, so take my life. Think about that. One day, he's on the mountain. The next day, he wants to quit ministry altogether. Does that sound familiar? I mean, one Sunday, you feel like walking in your calling, and the next day, you're wondering if you have anything left. And this is what Mondays feel like. And Elijah's story shows us three things every pastor needs to hear. Elijah thought he was the last one standing. He even says this in verse 10. He says, am I the only one left? And that's exactly how Mondays feel for pastors. Nobody understands what I'm carrying. Nobody knows the pressure that I feel. Nobody gets the loneliness of leading. But here's the truth. You're not the only one. Elijah wasn't the only one. In fact, God reminded him later that there were thousands who hadn't bowed down to this false god. He wasn't as alone as he thought he was. And guess what? You're not either. That sense of isolation that you feel, that is real. And ministry can feel incredibly lonely, but you're not the only one, because God is with you. He's with me. And even when you don't feel him in the earthquake or in the fire, and you're not the only pastor who's had a rough Sunday. Thousands of leaders are carrying the same weight and fighting the same lies. So you may feel alone, but listen, you are not alone. And I think what happens next in Elijah's story is so powerful. God doesn't rebuke Elijah for being tired. He doesn't say, Elijah, you need to toughen it up, pull up your bootstraps. Instead, he sends an angel who says, get up, and you ready? Go eat. And then Elijah falls asleep again. And this blows my mind, because this solution wasn't another sermon. It wasn't a spiritual pep talk. It was simply a nap and a snack. Sometimes the most spiritual thing that you can do on a Monday is take a nap. Go for a walk. Sit with your family at the dinner table with your phone turned off. Rest is not a weakness. It is worship. So Sabbath isn't a suggestion. It's a command. And God didn't build Sabbath into creation because he needed it. He built it into creation because we need it. And if Jesus could nap in a boat during a storm, you can take a Monday to rest without feeling guilty. Because when you rest, you're declaring that I'm not the one who's holding all this together. God is. And trust me, God is better at running the church than we are. So this story of Elijah, it keeps going. In verse 11, Elijah goes up on the mountain. He experiences a windstorm. Then he experiences an earthquake, and then he experiences a fire. But God wasn't in any of those things. But finally comes this gentle whisper. That whisper was God's way of saying, hey, Elijah, I am still here. I have more for you. And then God gives Elijah this new assignment. He wasn't finished. His ministry wasn't over. His calling was still intact. And maybe that's exactly what you need to hear today. Yesterday doesn't define your worth. Your worst sermon doesn't erase your calling. And that church attendance, those numbers, they don't cancel God's assignment for you. God is not done with you. If he woke you up this morning, he still has a purpose for your life and a purpose for your ministry. So on this Monday morning, let Elijah's story remind you of three things. Number one, you are not alone. You're not alone. He's with you. Rest is not weakness. And God is not done with you. The kingdom isn't built on perfect Sundays. The kingdom is built on Jesus through faithful pastors and leaders who keep showing up, even on a Monday. So if you feel like quitting, don't. If you feel invisible, not alone. And if you feel done, well, God isn't. If this resonated with you, I want to help you build better Mondays. So just hit subscribe so you don't miss the next episode of Between Sundays, because the truth is, you do not have to do this alone.